The role of the DJ in popular music, current culture, that's really essential and unique. DJs are the ones that bring in and popularize the newest forms of music. DJs are the ones who know what music works and what doesn't in front of audiences. It's not speculation. It's not someone at an office in a label thinking they know what a hit sounds like. DJs are actually in the field testing stuff out. DJs take risks. My career has a few chapters, and for each chapter there's that one eureka moment. Those are followed by other moments of how to adapt, how to not phase out after 5 years, because being 20 years deep is a challenge in itself. When I won the DMC World Championships when I was 15, that literally got my name out. It got me booked internationally. I went to Asia, Europe, Australia, wherever. But then years later, working with Kanye was a huge boost for me. Starting Fool's Gold, putting out my own records, having a top 5 record with Duck Sauce, those were milestones in my career too. DJing is bigger than it's ever been. DJs are on the covers of magazine and Forbes talks about them and endorsing colognes and cars and all this stuff, which is great. I've endorsed a bunch of that stuff too. But there is this lack of understanding of what a DJ really is. The fact that certain DJs will show up and if they're playing a 300-person club or a 10,000 capacity festival, these guys will play the same set song per song. That's not really what DJing is. Record selection is the most important thing, so knowing how to read the crowd and adapt your set on the fly, that's probably the main role of a DJ. So I don't care if you're the best scratcher or not, that's part of what I do. As DJs, we're supposed to flow with the vibe of the party and just provide a good time based on the audience and break new music. That's the most important side of DJing. And at the end of the day, just creating dope-ish, which is the most important thing in my life. I started DJing really young, like abnormally young. And for me it all started with scratching, discovering scratching and just getting infatuated with that. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, which means that I wasn't really like in the heart of the hip-hop scene. I was on the outside looking in. I got into hip-hop around 94 or so through like the Beastie Boys and Cypress Hill and Pharcyde and groups like that. And then through that I got into Native Tongues, De La Soul and Tribe and Gangstar and those kinds of groups. I would hear these records that had scratching in them. Like, you know, most hip-hop fans just are aware of scratching from hearing it on songs. By 95 I was like 13. And I remember trying to scratch on my dad's record player, which I think is something that most kids try. Thing is, most kids try it and it sounds like trash or something, or like the needle skips or something happens and then they just kind of like give up and go do something else. When I tried it, it sounded pretty good. So like I kept trying and I figured out a lot of the tricks by myself. My brother Dave, who now was in the band Chromeo, at the time he had a band in high school and him and his friends would come and hang out, and then one day they saw me scratch a record and they were all like, how come little bro can do this? No one could really do that stuff. And then they all encouraged me to really start practicing and make this a thing. My first couple gigs were with their band. My brother's band would play at local bars and music lounges. A couple times I accompanied with them and scratched with them. At these bars I was extremely underage, but we would make like a little agreement with bar managers and say, I'm performing, and then they would say, all right, cool, well you're gonna hang out in the manager's office until it's time to hit the stage, and then we'll bring you out and you go right back to hiding. In the very beginning I didn't have a proper turntable. I had my dad's record player. In lieu of a mixer, I found a switch on the amplifier that would cut the sound on and off. I used that as if it was a crossfader, and I just learned, but it was like a vertical thing. The turntable was here, amp was there, and I was like scratching like that, learning how to cut up the record. Yeah, I was 13, so I had a little bit of money in the bank from my bar mitzvah. Once this became like more of a serious hobby that I was working on every day after school, I had to convince my dad to let me spend a little bit of that money on an actual Technics 1200 turntable and a mixer. I got a Gemini Scratchmaster mixer. And my parents weren't too sure what the hell it was I was doing, but they were like, all right, you know, you seem to like this stuff. And then it took off really fast. Pretty quickly I started getting these write-ups in the local paper, a little column like, hey, there's this kid that scratches around town, like, this is weird. They started writing about me a little bit. I entered this one battle DMC DJ Championship, which is like really the most established franchise of DJ battles. After less than 2 years of scratching and a few random gigs around town, I tried my shot at a battle. I won my first battle. I entered the Montreal eliminations of the DMC Championships, won first place. Everyone sort of turned heads like, who's the kid? Everybody else was 25 or something, and I was 14. That took me to the Canadian finals. The weekly paper put me on the front cover right before the Canadian finals, just saying like, hey, Montreal, check this out. There's a local kid who's kind of front runner. I remember going to school and my friends being like, what's this? And just me being like, yeah, this is a thing I do. I started getting some attention. All I cared about was learning more, getting better, not messing up at my shows. I don't know if I was comfortable with the spotlight or slightly unaware of the spotlight. I was just kind of like, hey, I love this. That was it. It was just like, I really, really like to scratch and I want to be as good as I can at it.
And the 1997 Technics DMC World Champion is
DJ A-Trak.
Oh yeah! 15 years of age! What a revelation!
The name A-Trak, so my brother also used to write graffiti. Anybody who writes graffiti has their tag, their name, and I wanted to have like my name, even though I wasn't actually going out tagging at all. And A-Trak was just one of those names. I had maybe 2 or 3 that I would just write on paper. The A obviously is my actual first name, but it just sounded cool. I probably was vaguely aware that an 8-track is a thing. It just sounded catchy to me. And then I actually really needed a name because I was becoming a DJ, and I was like, well, 8-track, that's my name, you know, on the paper thing. I was 12. I didn't know what I was doing. I've had a lot of inspirations over the years. When I was first starting in 95, 6, 7, my inspirations ranged from anyone from Jazzy Jeff to Pete Rock and Premier. But then as I got into battling and even more intricate craft of turntablism, at that time was like burgeoning like crazy, and there was a huge wave of new tricks and skills being invented. I was inspired by guys like DJ Qbert from San Francisco, from the Invisible Scratch Pickles, who actually became a mentor to me. Mixmaster Mike. In New York, the Executioners. In LA, the Beat Junkies. J-Rock, who actually stayed an inspiration for an even longer time. If you looked at what the Executioners were doing in New York, it was different from what the Beat Junkies were doing in LA. I was just in my parents' basement watching VHS tapes of battles, breaking stuff down, rewinding, playing again, trying to understand what that trick was, recreating those same routines, going and finding those records, learning how to do those tricks, then coming up with my own versions on my choice of records. A lot of the DJs who were already around for a while, it was hard for them to learn this sudden new world of different kinds of scratches. For me, I was new to everything. I figured out a lot of these new scratches that a handful of amazing DJs were doing, and I built this sort of well-rounded style by taking a little bit from both coasts and just looking from the outside from Canada and being like, oh, I'll do a little this, little that. And I started doing these battles, and I think that's why I won a lot of them so quick right from the start. I think that's how I kind of had a quick rise.
That's an 8-track, right? Make some noise. This is what hip-hop has become today. DJ A-Trak is the man. No bullshit.
I met Kanye West in 2004. His first album just came out. He saw me scratch on some Jay-Z records. He saw me, he was like, I like this guy. Took me on tour. his first tour ever, opening for Usher. My first show with Kanye ever was on this Usher tour in a stadium in front of 14,000 people with no rehearsal. He was just like, yeah, we're doing a 1 hour sound check and the first show's tonight. That's it, boom, like fed me to the lions. But it worked, and I won his trust, and I ended up touring with him for 4 years. Through that, it really exposed not just myself, but my craft, the culture that I care about, which was originally pretty underground, and Kanye's visibility helped me show that to the rest of the world. Next thing you know, I was with him at the VMAs, at the Grammys, at all this stuff, and on big shows around the world. During my time with Kanye, I also started expanding what I do beyond just DJing. I already had these sort of like reflexes ingrained in my head of a DIY approach to putting out music, which was if I made a record that I thought was cool, if my friends around me made music that I thought was cool, it felt natural to me to send it to the manufacturing plant and sell, 2,000 or 3,000 of them. It didn't seem unattainable to me. Through my profile as a DJ that was already getting bigger and bigger, I would go and do an interview and stay in contact with the journalist, and then I would press up my friend's record and send it to that same journalist and just say, hey, do you want to review this? And built a little network like that. By the time I was working with Kanye, it was interesting because it gave me a ton of visibility, but also it felt like what I was known for as A-Trak, suddenly I was becoming Kanye West DJ, whereas for 10 years I was this child prodigy turned world champion turned whatever else. Now I was just like, oh yeah, he's Kanye's guy. So I felt like I had to really start hustling to market myself, get my name out. And that's the first time that I started making mixtapes, mix CDs, putting out mixes of my music. I started getting more interested in the presentation of stuff. What's the artwork that I like? And even musically, what I was doing was expanding. I went from being this purist of hip hop to just thinking like, well, I want to throw in some old school classics. There's new sounds in electronic music that's coming out of France and England that I'm really into, that is appealing to like my hip hop ear. Somehow I can mix genres now. It's the mashup era. We're mashing up one genre with another. So I'm starting to experiment with producing music myself, which is all on software, so I could just be on a tour bus and just teach myself how to make beats, make mashups, make mixes, put stuff out, market myself. I was meeting all these cool like downtown streetwear designers. Next thing you know, I'm collaborating with t-shirts for the first time, making merch. About a year or two into that whole process, by 2007, I decided to start Fool's Gold, which is the record label that I still run. Fool's Gold started as a record label. It's grown into more of a multifaceted company that's still independent. We never did any joint ventures with major labels. We never took any investment money. We never wanted to answer to anyone really. But Fool's Gold, we always had a vision that went further than just being a record label. We started making t-shirts within our first year just for fun. And still to this day, there's none of our peers in the space that we're in, which is straddling hip hop and electronic music. No one in our scene has a brick and mortar store that sells only their own music. From the moment that we opened the physical store in 2011, we opened an online store too. We're here at the Fool's Gold shop, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I sent a tweet today that I was gonna be here at 5 to sell tickets for any latecomers, no service fees because it's not online.
It's really you. You're actually here.
Most musicians don't want to have to put stuff in a box themselves and label it and ship it off. But maybe we're picky, maybe we're obsessive. But we wanted to have it on our own URL. We wanted to design the whole presentation of the store the way it looks, which launched at the same time as the physical store. As we're talking on our social networks about like, yo, we have a shop. Well, our fan who's in Dublin, our fan who's in Australia, wherever else, they can't go to the store, so they go online and buy the stuff online. The A-Trak brand, I've been using the hashtag RealDJing a lot. It started with these posts that I was writing on my Instagram, where I would just kind of talk about DJing and the craft and where the craft fits into DJ culture itself nowadays. If you ask me what's the A-Trak brand, there's a few things that come with it. Fool's Gold is intimately tied to what A-Trak is. So on the A-Trak side, the real DJing thing is really important. And then with that also comes some of my own productions. What I post about on Instagram, or how do I dress, what clothes, a leather jacket, that's part of the brand. What artists I support, that's part of the brand. And then Fool's Gold is a record label that I founded in 2007 in New York. And it's a very new school company, very progressive-minded record label. We sign a lot of new artists who end up influencing the sound of music for years to come. Some of our more popular signings, I would name Kid Cudi, Danny Brown, Run the Jewels, Flostradamus, Duck Sauce, and a couple more, ranging from hip-hop to electronic and anything in between, and even a couple of curveballs that we just happen to be into. Fool's Gold is a label that is operated by DJs who aren't genre specific. We don't really care about what genre something is. It's just, is this an artist who we think is going to make an impact that's even bigger than the description of one song? Aesthetics are very important to Fool's Gold. We take a lot of pride in our artwork, our presentation. We have art exhibitions and things like that at the store.
We're here at Fool's Gold Day Off. Thanks for coming to Queens and we're gonna rock all day. How y'all feeling? I feel good too.
We have an events company that puts on festivals, biggest of which is called Fool's Gold Day Off, which is a yearly festival that takes place in a couple cities.
Fool's Gold Day Off is where the whole community comes together, where we get to book not only Fool's Gold artists, but also like-minded artists, friends and family. For me, it's even an opportunity to reach out to some of these artists and say, hey, I like what you do, and then just extend in that olive branch and just bring them in. You know, it's not even 5 p.m. and it's already there, so we're just gonna keep it fun going all day.
We got some good music for you today. We got some surprises. We got a bunch of this.
How to pop a
Alright? Okay.
Fool's Gold has become a vehicle for me to champion new music, to reach out to new artists that I think are dope, who might not even be signed to a label, and say, hey, do you want to play our Los Angeles event? Do you want to play our Austin event? And build ties through that. And that connects back to my own work as A-Trak. I might book someone on Fool's Gold Day Off in some city and then end up going in the studio with them the next week and make a record with them. So everything's connected in that way. The satisfaction of working with amazing artists like what we have on Fool's Gold, signing someone and then being able to release their music, the pride that I get from that is really the main reason why I do this in the first place. I love championing music. I love finding artists that I believe in, where I'll email some of my friends and say, check this guy out, he's dope, check this girl out, she's dope. And then having people see it and get it, helping them make their videos, helping them get the best remixes possible, getting them the best artwork, and then presenting it to the world, making that package and showing it to the world, showing it to journalists, influencers, whoever, or just kids who have good taste and being like, check this out, isn't this cool? And for them to be like, yeah, it is cool. And then you're like, I knew it.
As a wise person said, another one.
Probably the biggest challenge of what I do at this point in my life is the juggling act. But then again, the juggling act is the only way I know how to operate. I don't think I'd be able to only do one thing. The fact that I do 4 or 5 things at any given time, it gives me the luxury of actually never getting bored and never even being stumped on anything. Because if I'm stumped on one thing, I'll work on 3 other things, and then that one thing unclogs. Just the way that my brain thinks, I like to think about many things at once. An idea for one project will turn into ideas that can work for other projects too. It keeps me excited and satisfied, and in a career that spans more than 20 years, I've never been bored. I exhaust myself sometimes. I work crazy hours. Why have certain things work for me? I think part of it is having the right people around you is so important. On one hand, there's management, but to be honest, I'm extremely close to my brother who's also in music, and he and I contribute to each other's vision and goals in ways that can't even really be described. What I do as A-Trak and even Fool's Gold, Dave is always in the mix somewhere, and we really work very closely. And he's kind of like the unspoken part of the team, and then the management team kind of helps me execute the ideas. And then my bro is just somewhere always by my side, bouncing ideas with me, but it works. What I really care about is leaving an impact. The cocky way to say it is to get in the history books. The noble way to say it is to shift culture in ways that are memorable. When it's all said and done, it's like there's reasons why people go back and talk about the Andy Warhols and the Fab Five Freddys and the Basquiats and the Bambaataa kind of figures, or even like Malcolm McLaren. Those are people who shifted culture, who put their footprint on the arts, who even brought together people from different walks of life, because that's part of the power of music, is breaking down socio-economic barriers and bringing people together. And at the end of the day, just creating dope-ish. I'm a DJ. Look, I get paid to play records at a party. Maybe that might seem superficial, but at least I like to think that by helping certain artists progress in their own career, by creating music that touches people, and by providing memorable moments, I hope that that touches people in a positive way, because that's why I do it, to honor the ones that came before me, that influenced me, and hopefully influence other people. What I'm working on is a combination of continuing what I've been working on for a few years with a few new additions. My own music has been more and more of a priority in recent years, but it's only in the last 2 years or so that I started making what I would call the A-Trak records. That sound continues to be a priority for the next while, at least to get more of my records out. Growing Fool's Gold is a huge priority to me, and that's exciting, and I'm very involved with that. I'm starting to plan a DJ competition that is part of my way to give opportunities to new, talented DJs, because obviously there's prizes that come with winning, including being able to perform at a show that I put on, or me releasing their music, but also bringing new life into a side of DJing that is very dear to me, which is battle DJing, that fell to the wayside a little bit in the last 10 or 15 years. But I'm attached to it because it's how I got my name out, and I just think it's dope. There's nothing doper than a good battle. Nothing I do is as simple as what it looks like on paper. On one hand, I never feel fully satisfied, never feel that I made it. But on the other hand, I'm extremely thankful. There's never been a thing in my life where I felt like once I have that, I'll be set. I'm not done, but I'm not chasing one thing either. I'm just constantly readjusting this master plan of just trying to make dopeness and facilitate dopeness and bring dopeness to the world. And that's the bigger plan.